Welcome to Return to Work Week, powered by workingmums.co.uk. I'm Gillian Nissim, founder of Working Mums, and I'm your host today. Working Mums have been supporting job seekers for looking for a better work-life balance for over 17 years, and we're really excited to introduce Return to Work Week. And the week really puts a spotlight on those organisations that are supporting women who want to return to work after a career break by offering work that works for them, as well as providing expert advice on everything from CV writing to negotiating flexible working. This morning's webinar focuses on how to forge a career in the tech centre, and I'm delighted to welcome Suzy Dean today as our expert. And Suzy is the founder and CEO of Add-in 365, a business which is now one of Microsoft's top 15 global partners, and is the winner of an Every Woman Award for her commitment to building a successful IT business and promoting women in IT. Suzy's going to talk to us about what life's like in the tech sector, help you discover if a career in tech is right for you, and what career paths you could take. Please do ask questions throughout. If you use the chat function, you'll see that at the bottom of your screens. We will make sure there's time to answer as many questions as we can towards the end of today's webinar. So with that, welcome, Suzy.
Thank you for having me
here today. It's great to see you. Let's kick off it'd be great if you could tell us a bit about your journey and how you became an award winner in the tech sector.
Well, it goes back quite a long way. So I was doing a degree in London in government, actually, which of course doesn't really lead to any particular sort of job. And I needed to earn some money. So I took some part-time work as a receptionist in one of the first Microsoft partners in the UK. It was about 2004, something like that. While I was a student, ended up going from the reception desk to telesales, and the telesales desk manager, then a sales manager, then a project manager, then an account manager, and sales director around the just after the financial crisis, so around 2010. So I sort of quite accidentally fell into the tech sector with no technical background, but very much learnt on the ground, learnt through the day-to-day of the doing, and it sort of career evolved from there, really. A few years later, I started my first business, and then learnt some lessons and started Add-in 365 8 years ago now, which is obviously the business that I run now. So an accidental entry to the tech sector. Oh, you're on mute.
Classic. That's really interesting. And you say you kind of fell into it accidentally. Did you have an interest and stroke aptitude for tech?
I think your predisposition as a person is quite important, isn't it? When you select work that you want to do. And I've always been a problem solver. If I see a problem, I have to fix it. And so the earlier part of my career trajectory was really about seeing problems and just thinking that can so obviously be done so much better than it's being done now. I'm going to go and say something, which probably there's a point there about being proactive. But the thing that happened in tech when I started working in this space that still exists today and is a huge problem is there's a big gulf between technical people and everybody else. And I remember being involved in early engagements with customers where you'd have ordinary business people, normal people, sort of saying, oh, well, can we do this and can we do this? And you'd have a technical person on the other end of the table. Honestly, they could be speaking Japanese. It made no sense. And so there was this huge challenge between ordinary people, business people, technicians, and I became the translator between the two. And I think even today, the sector needs more business-minded, normal folk to aid that translation, because technology is only getting more complicated. Everybody talks about now about AI, security. Actually, the hardest thing is explaining to ordinary people what that means for them. And so, a lot of what I've done in my early career, but actually what my business is now do, what we sort of exist in the world to deliver to people, is that ease of understanding of what does this tech do, make it something easy to apply, easy to use, in order that business and society as a whole gets benefit from it. I think that the nervousness around tech can be that it feels like this black box of, oh, you've got to be some sort of developer to get on in it, when actually the industry as a whole is crying out for the opposite of that, so that people can get proper value from it.
Thank you. That's a really interesting view on the industry, and I think something that we'll come back to shortly when we're looking at different careers. Another area I'm keen to understand more about is I mean, the tech sector is seen as very male dominated, and it'd be interesting to get your perspective on that, but also whether in your journey to what you're doing today, you encountered any bias, and if so, what you did to overcome it.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, I think a lot has changed in the last 20 years, a lot. But yes, certainly there was an attitude when I was, and I think, by the way, possibly if you're sort of in your early to mid 20s, there might still be some of this attitude. I don't know how much of this is the industry changing or just me being older than I was then. But there was a bit of an attitude of women, particularly on the sales and marketing side. It's almost being there to entertain, rather than being there to lead a session or to get a result. And I do remember a boss, I found out that somebody that was doing the same job as me, a chap, was earning more. And when I confronted my boss about it, he said, well, he has to pay for his girlfriend. As though there was someone paying for me. But, you know, sort of accepted it and went off and carried on. So I don't think it's so bad today, but I wouldn't say it's non-existent. I was at a CEO event, I think about 18 months ago, and there was a dinner and the wine was flowing, and you know, there's been a very good conversation amongst these tech CEOs during the day, and one of the chaps had a little too much to drink, I think, and he said, well, you know, you're really feisty, aren't you? And then someone else chipped in, oh yes, she's scary Suzy. And I said, hang on a minute, I said, if I was a chap, you wouldn't be talking to me like that. So I think that, you know, I wouldn't say that there's none of that, but I would certainly say, I think I think everybody is quite aware that if you turned around to a woman and said she was being paid less because she doesn't have to pay for her girlfriend, it'd been quite a bit of hot water. So I think, yes, certainly had it less of it around today. Though I do think women face a general and ongoing problem around pregnancy, early years, childcare. And I know that there is reluctance, I think, to hire women if they're known to have young children, or someone thinks, oh, possibly, you know, child coming into their child, you know, perhaps someone that's just got married, they might be thinking, oh, is she going to just kind of go off and have children now? I've built a business with a lot of resilience, with 60% female, and we factor that into our business model. But you know, I also know from other parts of my career that actively works against you, because there is that sense of, are we going to bring this person in and invest in her only to have her go off? Though solving that, where, as you know, an individual business owner, I'm doing something about it, I think really there needs to be more collective structural pressure on government to afford more early years childcare, either at affordable cost or frankly, my view is it should be for free. The state should be, you know, paying for that for everybody that wants it.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, that's something we are very vocal about as a business too. I mean, I think the other side to that is that the employers that we work with through Working Mums are generally, you know, they're very cognizant of these issues, and you know, they are like yourself, you know, have policies and practice built in to avoid that happening, because we recognise the skills and experience and the importance of retaining those skills and experience in the business. And I think from the other side, some of the things that sometimes maybe hold people back from returning into tech is the worry that they've missed something in the 6-12 months or more that they've not been in the business. but again, that's a recognises attitude and aptitude, and with the right refresher training, you know, you don't lose the key skills. I mean,
I think that there's a lot published online today now as well, that's sort of free of charge and ready to use. So imagining you've taken a year out or longer, has technology moved on? Yes, of course it has. But actually catching up, most of the big technology vendors have all of their global conference sessions available online for free that you can sign up to and watch. They've got their content on YouTube. They've got their written sites. Partners and vendors will have case studies. I think what I would do in that situation is carve out some time and explain to my family and friends who might be perhaps I might be asking them to help out a bit with the childcare, is actually do yourself justice and carve out the time to do that reading. Don't try and do it after you've had a long day looking after the kids and you put them to bed and it's 8 o'clock and you're now sitting down attempting to do 2 hours of watching some, you know, reasonably weighty videos. You almost have to give yourself a study leave before you dive back in, to give yourself the best possible chance of doing well as you re-enter the workplace. And honestly, you know, why shouldn't you? It's your career. Just because you become a mother, it's not worth less or something to be fit around childcare. I think you know, if you're lucky, if you have a partner, you'd almost want to be saying to them, look, please take child out, go and see your parents or whatever for Saturday. I need the day to get my head back into what I've missed.
That's a really good point, actually. I think, you know, that time is so important. It's investing in yourself as well. And kind of moving that on, if for our audience, you know, who may be thinking about a career in tech or returning to tech, what other advice can you give?
I think that the general thing is that tech is a fast-paced sector. It changes. You in order to be good in any discipline within technology, you need to stay on top of what's going on, and that does involve listening to things and watching things in your own time. That's not going to work for everybody, right? And so I think the first question is tech even the right sector for you? Yes, would be if you're open to that and actually you find you get a bit bored, and so you need that sort of change going on to stay interested. I'm one of those people. If you're somebody that much prefers to sort of conquer something and you don't like too much change, then obviously there are other industries and sectors that you can go into, like the legal sector, for example, where there isn't as much change. So firstly, sort of have an honest conversation with yourself about the kind of work that you like doing. I think the second thing is that everything is tech. Tech is everything, right? You know, Disney is a technology company. Of course, you've got the big technology companies and vendors like, you know, Microsoft and Google and so on. But you couldn't work for Sainsbury's without, in head office, without there being a technology aspect to it. This is a good thing because it means there's more choice. What does a career in tech mean? It doesn't just necessarily mean working for a company that provides pure play tech to N number of industries, which is what my business happens to do. It can actually mean you think about what you really love, and then you go to the tech aspect of that. You know, if you're really into architecture and design, you might go and work for a company that produces architectural technology. You know, if you're into creative and advertising and media and you've always had a passion for that, you know, you could go and work for Adobe in their creative department. So so I think, you know, what it means to have a career in tech doesn't necessarily mean go and work for a tech company. It can mean go and work for a high street sort of business that you've heard of, working on their particular technology offering.
So the research is really important.
Yes. Although in the end, I think you've got to kind of get stuck in, and there's definitely work that you should do ahead of that in terms of determining what kind of a role you might want. And I think we're going to talk about this in a little bit, whether it's back office or something more technical. But I do think the other piece of guidance on a sort of advice, if you're considering a career in tech, is know what in your heart of hearts you need around childcare. If you need holidays off, the school holidays, don't go for a job interview and think, I'm not going to tell them that. I'll try and swing that one later, because it will hold you back. You know, you're much better off being upfront about what you can and can't commit to, because then you'll find a company that's a good fit for how you want to work. I mean, a lady that in my business came when she was tearing her hair out. She's 3 kids. Last one was 9 months old, and she'd put her son that was 9 months old in sort of 20 hours a week childcare, and she said, I just need to work. I'm losing my mind. I have to work, do something for 20 hours. That was years ago. 4 years on, all the kids are in school, and actually even now she's doing 9 to 3. So she does the time when her children are at school, and we have an understanding that holidays are off. So I think, you know, if you want a stable job where you're still going to have an opportunity to be promoted, you've got to be honest about what you can and can't do. As an employer, I would say my only bugbear is when I know that a parent isn't a single parent and it's mummy that's at home every time the children are sick, because I kind of think, come on, you're both working, you've both got serious careers. You know, I like to see a division of when little Jimmy is off ill, mum and dad or mum and mum or dad and dad are taking time off to look after the kids. But yeah, have your story straight on childcare and don't deviate from it.
Good advice. And coming back to roles, and is it a back office role or not, what are the different avenues that people can take if they're considering a role in tech, and what other particular skills do you think you need? I think communication is going to be one of those skills.
I think if technology is still a new industry compared to others, and so the sector absorbs a lot of people from different disciplines, and it takes on and it appreciates those transferable skills. So even if you've never worked in tech before, if you're a brilliant writer, if you're great at negotiation, if you're hyper organized, you can still find a home. I think there's broadly 3 types of job you can have in the tech sector. One is what you'd call a traditional back office role: sales, marketing, finance, HR. One is the developer, the more technical role, and one is more on that translation activity that I talked about at the beginning. So typically in the industry, they're called consultants or user experience designers. I think the back office roles are pretty standard, you know, marketing, sales, finance, HR. What I would say is that if you're somebody that's got some of those skills, or you're interested in one of those types of roles, obviously the tech sector is good because it pays well. So you could go and do finance or HR in any sort of business, but technology gives the better wages. So that might be a reason for moving in. The person interviewing, though, would still want to see a passion for the technology and also an understanding of what's different about tech. You know, often an interview question will be, well, why don't you go and do HR in the company down the road? So there'd need to be something in you driving that beyond just it's better paid. The developer, more traditional technical roles, we had an influx of employees about 2 years ago, and they'd all done one of these courses that you do and you pay for in your own time. And we had a guy join, very young guy, from a Manchester paper mill. He'd gone of his own accord and done this course and turned up. Had another guy that had been selling insurance in a call centre, same thing. And they'd done this course, and then they came into our company, and we sort of trained them up in those developer skills. So I say that because it doesn't matter how old you are or what you've done before. If you really think that you would like to be a hands-on developer, nothing to stop you going and doing one of these. I think that particular guide is something called Northern Coders, but there's a ton of these sort of courses you can go and do in your own time to develop those skills. So don't think because I didn't do a degree in computer science, I can't possibly become a developer, because there's a ton of people doing these own time courses. So that's the second kind of job. And then on this user experience, this sort of consulting type positions, people that are analytical and creative tend to do really well in those. I mean, we trained an NHS nurse to being a consultant, and actually quite recently, this was totally coincidental, we had two architects who obviously design, that's kind of what their brain is wired to do. They've joined and user experience professionals in the business. So yeah, I think again, nothing to stop anyone applying for those. And you know, I think that shows that you can have quite a varied background, but most skills are transferable one way or another.
Really interesting. So I mean, the key thing is to show those transferable skills, I guess, and a passion for the role, sector, and
yeah, and being serious about it when you turn up and reading around it. You know, I mentioned earlier about the idea of almost saying I need the day to get my head into to what I'm going to interview for. It's never good if somebody turns up to an interview and they give their opinion, but there's no kind of understanding of that particular discipline. You know, for example, if we're recruiting an HR person, we want them to be talking about, you know, referencing, because obviously there's a ton of HR frameworks. They might say, oh, you know, I follow that particular HR framework, and I like to use the 9-box grid when I'm working with leadership teams to understand how we're going to reward colleagues for their efforts. So you want people to reference things beyond just their own opinion. You know, people that turn up for marketing jobs, showing that they've read different types of marketing leaders, thinkers, that they've got models that they would use to run a campaign, shows they're actually really thinking about what's best practice in that discipline, and they're bringing that into the business. Because, you know, opinion's important, but it only takes you so far. Generally in a business, when you put someone in a role, you want them to perform that function, but, you know, for them to perform that function optimally is a mix of experience, acumen, and also an understanding of what the rest of the market's doing. And you're very reliant on people to bring that. And even something like sales, which is traditionally a business where you know, perhaps people think, oh, I can sort of wing it. The best salespeople read the business pages, they're aware of market fluctuations, and they bring that to bear in their sales strategy. So I think whoever you are in the business, you know, if you're thinking about those next steps with your career, it's got to be part of the daily routine, that you're staying on top of things, even if you give yourself a 15-minute reading window a day. You know, first thing in the morning or before bed or whatever, you've got to stay on top of your game.
Brilliant. Thank you, Suzy. And in terms of next steps, you know, being aware of what's going on in the market, etc. Is there anything else you'd recommend? I mean, it'd be good to get a couple of last tips before we come on to questions.
I think if you're sort of preparing for your next steps, you're thinking about going to work again, do really think about, is tech right for me? Like I said, it's an ever-changing business. For some people that's great because they get bored. For others it would be a nightmare. It's not for them. So have that understanding of yourself and what you want to do. Work out your what you actually want in terms of hours and how that might fit with your childcare and all of that, and be upfront, because tech is very open to flexible working and all that sort of thing. And in the end, nothing would be more disheartening for somebody than going in and then being let go of after 3 months because it turns out the employer had no idea that they needed X, Y, and Z sort of flexibility. Think about the kind of role that you want to go for, whether it's that more back office more around the user experience, or whether you want to take a developer course or something like that, and invest in that time, both in terms of getting yourself ready to go back, if it's something you've done previously but not for a while. So do that reading around and stay on top of that discipline as a whole, and then obviously put your best foot forward on the day. And again, sometimes I think us ladies, we're a bit too we don't want to drop any balls, but actually, possibly even packing the kids off the night before to stay with a friend or a grandparent or a sibling, so that you've had a good night's rest. You can get up, relax, go and do a great job at the interview. Makes all the difference. So know that it's a big moment for you, and kind of don't feel ashamed or like you're imposing on people for saying you need time to prepare and time to do your best on the day.
Brilliant. Thank you, Suzy. And I can see some really good questions coming through. First one I'm going to come to is from Seth, who says, I've finished a boot camp in front-end web development, but I've got imposter syndrome. Is there a way to defeat this feeling, please? And how do I capture in my CV that I'm trying to change my career path from healthcare assistant to tech?
We've hired a ton of people that have done exactly what you've done. About half of them had imposter syndrome. Some of them still do. I think be really clear in going for those sort of graduate level roles, so that you're going into a position at a level that is right for where you are. That will help. When you're in interview, don't be scared to ask questions about how are you going to help me develop. Obviously, there is an expectation when you do a boot camp that you continue to do things in your own time. So make sure you're doing that. That will help you to feel like less of an imposter if you've got a little project going on that you dip in and out of in your own time as well. But also, as I said, make sure you're asking the employer how they're going to help you level your skills up. You don't want to end up on a support desk for an period of time.
Thank you, Suzy. And another one from Mel. I used to be an IT systems trainer, but took a long career break of over 10 years, ready to go back to work, but not sure where to start to regain my confidence, refresh my skills, etc., or whether I want to restart my career at a lower level to get back into it. Do you have any advice?
Whichever technology you were training in, go back to that, Google, catch up, read. You don't need me to tell you. There'll be loads of stuff on YouTube, loads of stuff on the web. Get comfortable with it. Pose yourself some questions. If I was doing a training course around that today, how would I do it? How would I structure it? And then just go for it. Don't apply for a lower level job, because experience is cumulative. It's not something that you lose points if you've been out of work for a little while. It's still experience that you have.
Thank you. We've had a question about whether career in tech can be flexible. I think you've proven that it can.
Yeah. I mean, this is the big technology companies like Google and Microsoft and so on have very much actually set that as the industry norm in terms of flexible working and all the rest of it. Just be very upfront about that with whoever you're interviewing for. In fact, before you even turn up for interview, be upfront about that, so that there's no surprises or problems later.
And then we have quite a few questions around recommended coding courses, and someone who studied to be a cloud solutions architect, but nobody hired her with just that skill. And other things.
The thing with architecture and technical architecture, it is the most senior, pivotal, critical thing in any technology ecosystem for any business to get right. So I'm not surprised that doing a course meant you didn't get a job at that level. Architecture is something, technical architecture is something that it's great that you've got that course and that foundation, but you need to go and work in an IT team alongside more established architects. Bigger companies have an architecture team. You almost want to look at the FTSE 100. All of those companies will have an architecture team, not just one architect. And you would want to, I would personally write a note to them, explain your experience, say, and ask if they've got any positions open. Most big companies will run a talent pool. So even if they don't have a role today, they'll keep you on file for when they do have that sort of position available. But yes, go to a bigger company where You can work within a team of architects to develop your skills. Experience is everything in technical architecture.